Now, it's time for Act Two from Oscar Wilde's masterpiece, The Importance of Being Earnest. This is where a few, shall we say, tiny lies start to snowball into a complete and total avalanche of deception. So let's get right into it. So let's start with this quote from young Cecily Cardew. It perfectly sets the stage for the entire play. She says that she keeps a diary so she won't forget the secrets of her life. But if you think about it, this isn't really about memory at all. It's almost a mission statement. In a way, this single line tells us everything we need to know about the world Oscar Wilde has created. Reality that's often far too ordinary. What truly matters to these characters are the stories they invent, the identities they create, and the secrets they tell themselves. In The Importance of Being Earnest, imagination is often far more exciting than truth, and that is exactly where all the comedy begins. Okay, so we're stepping into a romantic fantasy. This is where we meet Cecily Cardew, Jack Worthing's young ward. Picture it, a beautiful country garden, absolutely perfect, like something out of a storybook. But here's the funny part. Despite all that beauty, Cecily is bored out of her mind. She wants excitement, adventure, and romance, something much more interesting than her everyday life. But Cecily isn't the type to just sit around complaining about being bored. Instead, she creates her own excitement. She hates her German lessons, is strangely fascinated by wickedness, and has written herself into a full-blown romance. The object of her affection? Ernest, Jack's rebellious younger brother. There's just one tiny problem. Ernest doesn't actually exist. And now, two lies, one garden. This is the moment everything starts to fall apart. That peaceful country garden is about to become a battleground where fantasy collides with reality. All those carefully crafted stories and secret identities are on a direct collision course. And it all starts with one very unexpected visitor. So, cue line number one, in walks Algernon Moncrief. He's managed to track down Jack's country address, and he decides it's the perfect opportunity for a little bun burying that is escaping reality by pretending to be someone else. So he shows up posing as Jack's wicked younger brother, Ernest. And here's the problem. This is the exact same Ernest that Cecily has been daydreaming about, writing letters to, and essentially falling in love with for months. You can almost hear the ticking clock. The moment Cecily meets the man she thinks she's been waiting for, the chaos is officially underway. But just as Algernon, posing as Ernest, is working his charm on Cecily, lie number two comes crashing into the garden. Because who shows up? Jack himself. And he's returned from London dressed entirely in black, looking like he's just stepped out of a Victorian funeral. Why? Because he's come to deliver some tragic news. His wayward brother Ernest, he announces, is dead. Of course, there's one small problem. The Ernest standing right in front of him isn't dead at all. In fact, he's currently flirting with Cecily. And just like that, Jack's carefully constructed lie runs straight into Algernon's. So, yeah, talk about awkward. This is where Wilde's comic genius really shines. You have Jack standing there in full mourning clothes, solemnly announcing that his poor brother Ernest has died in Paris from a severe chill. And meanwhile, right there in the garden is Algernon, very much alive, casually introducing himself as Ernest. The timing couldn't be worse or better, depending on your perspective. Jack has arrived to bury a lie, only to discover that the lie is standing in front of him, shaking hands and charming his ward. It's one of those moments that is so absurd you can't help but laugh. The fiction has literally come to life at the exact moment its creator tries to destroy it. All right, hold on, because it gets even better. Just when you think this situation couldn't possibly become more complicated, another guest arrives from London, the one and only Gwendolen Fairfax. And if you've been keeping track of the lies, you can probably see where this is going. Gwendolyn believes she's engaged to a man named Ernest Worthing. Cecily, meanwhile, believes she's engaged to Jack's younger brother, Ernest. The problem, of course, is that both women think they're engaged to the same name but not the same person. What follows is one of the funniest scenes in the entire play. Two perfectly polite young ladies sit down for tea, smile at each other, exchange compliments, and then proceed to wage a full-scale war with sugar cubes, cake, and impeccable manners. So, Gwendolyn arrives with all the confidence of a top-tier London socialite and immediately makes her position clear. She's come all the way to the country to see her fiancé, Ernest Worthing. And in her mind, that's simply a statement of fact. She's not asking questions. She's not opening a discussion. She's politely informing this quaint country girl of the situation. Case closed. The problem, of course, is that Cecily is standing there thinking, that's funny, because I'm engaged to Ernest Worthing. Temperature at the tea table drops about 20 degrees. Ah, but Cecily, our devoted diary keeper, has a little surprise of her own. Very politely, she suggests that Gwendolyn might be mistaken. Why? Because according to Cecily, Ernest is engaged to her. In fact, he proposed just 10 minutes ago. And she's not just making this up on the spot. She has the receipts, dates, details, and the entire history of their romance are carefully recorded right there in her diary. Of course, there's one tiny problem. Most of that romance exists only in Cecily's imagination. And what happens next is a masterclass in polite Victorian warfare. This is where Oscar Wilde's genius really shines. The two women go to battle, but they do it with perfect manners and impeccable smiles. On the surface, they're having a completely civil conversation. Underneath, they're trading carefully aimed insults, each one a little sharper than the last. They take shots at each other's backgrounds, lifestyles, and social standing, all while sounding perfectly respectable. And that's exactly what makes the scene so funny. Wilde is poking fun at a society that valued politeness above all else, showing how people could be absolutely ruthless without ever raising their voices. But the real battle happens over tea. Cecily just beautifully weaponizes the entire tea service. It's incredible. So Gwendolyn snobbishly says sugar isn't fashionable. Boom. Cecily puts 4 huge lumps in her cup. Gwendolyn then asks for bread and butter. Nope. Cecily serves her a giant slice of cake instead. This is passive aggression turned into an art form. It's just delicious. Okay? The men are exposed. The whole web is about to untangle. This cold war of cake and sugar comes to a screeching halt the second the men walk back in. Suddenly, the women are on the same team. They join forces and they have one simple question. Which one of you is Ernest Worthing? And here's the breakdown, which really just lays all the chaos out on the table. It's simple, really. Both guys have been using the exact same fake name. You've got Jack, whose real name is John, pretending to be Ernest for Gwendolyn, and you've got Algernon pretending to be the very same Ernest for Cicely. It's a total complete mess. So finally, they're completely cornered. There's nowhere left to hide. At this point, Jack has no choice but to tell the truth. And when he does, it pulls the rug out from under everyone. He admits that he doesn't have a brother named Ernest. In fact, he doesn't have a brother at all. The man that both Gwendolyn and Cecily believe they're engaged to, he isn't real. He never was. Just imagine hearing that. One woman has crossed the country to see her fiancé. The other has built an entire romance around him. And now they're both being told that the person at the center of it all doesn't actually exist. For a moment, the whole world they've been living in simply collapses. All right, so what happens now? The lies are out in the open. The secret identities have fallen apart. Everyone finally knows the truth. And you would think that would be the biggest problem. But this is an Oscar Wilde play. The real issue, at least for Gwendolyn and Cecily, isn't that they've been deceived. It's that the men they love aren't actually named Ernest. I know, after everything we've just been through, that sounds completely ridiculous, but that's exactly the joke. Both women have become so attached to the idea of the name Ernest that they treat it as more important than the actual character of the person standing in front of them. The name has become a fantasy, and they're not quite ready to let go of it. And this right here is the central joke of the whole play. It turns out that both women are obsessed with the name Ernest. Gwendolyn says the name inspires absolute confidence. Cecily has always dreamed of loving someone named Ernest. So the problem isn't really the lies, it's the name. They haven't fallen in love with the men at all. They've fallen in love with an idea. And unfortunately for Jack and Algernon, being named John or Algernon just isn't going to cut it. And this right here is the central joke of the whole play. It turns out that both women are obsessed with the name Ernest. Gwendolyn says the name inspires absolute confidence. Cecily has always dreamed of loving someone named Ernest. So, in the end, the real problem isn't the lies, it's the name. They haven't fallen in love with the men themselves. They've fallen in love with the idea of Ernest. And unfortunately for Jack and Algernon, being named John or Algernon just isn't going to cut it. And that's where we leave things at the end of Act 2, right on the edge of complete absurdity. Which brings us to the central question of the play. What does it actually mean to be Ernest? Is it just a name? A label that sounds respectable and inspires confidence? Or is it something deeper, being honest, sincere, and truthful? As Jack and Algernon are about to discover, those two things are not necessarily the same.
If you'd like more personalized feedback, writing support, and discussion sessions, they're available with me or with our selected tutors. All the details are here.